Hello everybody, my name is Johannes Debus. I'm the music director of the Canadian Opera Company, and it's my delight to sit here today with my friend Robert Busiakiewicz, music director of St. James Cathedral. Robert is not only the great chorus master at St. James, he also is a great singer himself. He is a composer and arranger, and he is a music scholar, and I would call him a treasure seeker of some sort. And last but not least, he is the founder and artistic director of Opus 8, this very fine group of 8 singers who perform a cappella. We're sitting here to talk a little bit about your sort of latest creation, a new CD, which is the second recording you made with Opus 8, and ironically, you call it Firsts. Robert, could you tell us a little bit about how that title came along, about the idea of the CD and its genesis?
Of course. So Opus 8 likes to record and perform lots of music which is not often performed, and it seems to be something that the singers like doing and seem to do well. And I thought, can we make a CD of all music which hasn't been recorded before or not in this particular way? For example, has it been recorded by instruments and not by a choir before at this pitch? And so I started looking around for pieces that really needed to be recorded, in my opinion. And so I started with a piece by John Beckwith, who's this tremendous Toronto-based composer and educator. And then I wanted to add in 2 more pieces by former teachers of mine, Richard Meehan and Robin Holloway. And then once we had those pieces, I started to think, okay, what pieces do we like to do with the choir? And we spent quite a lot of time with the music of 16th century Belgium and Franco-Flemish music from that period. And so I started studying the complete works of Nicolas Gombert, Jean Loritier, and Thomas Crequillon. These are composers that my other teachers in London used to really study quite a lot. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to carry on some of their work and say, okay, here are some really fantastic secular pieces that look really exciting. So we pulled those out of the library and thought, let's give this all a go and see what sounds good. And that's how we came up with the idea of Firsts.
This is really fascinating, I have to tell you. And I wonder if Spotify will give you some credits for adding to their incredible list and their vast repertoire. But I wanted to ask you, since there is basically no point of reference, how do you approach it when you dig out the repertoire, when you make the decision, oh yeah, I think this is a fantastic piece, never done before. So what's the process for you?
Well, with the ancient music, I'd say the biggest question is tempo. We really don't know how fast these things were going, whether they were dirges or whether they were taken at lightning speed. The text is something that can give you a clue. If it's a sad text, it probably wasn't super fast. But that's always a big question, is tempo. Second one is pitch. A lot of these pieces come from a time when there was no standardized pitch in Europe. So the Deering pieces were extremely high, some pieces by Gombert were extremely low, and so we had to transpose them and jig them around so that they were performable by a normal SATB choir. And the third thing that I find quite an interesting challenge is the language itself. So, 16th century Belgium had a very curious way of pronouncing French. And if you start to open Pandora's box with that, you get into a real nightmare of pronunciation. So we had to make some compromises on all 3 of those areas, which is a real interesting challenge, but it makes the process really stimulating. And the other thing is musica ficta. We know that at cadences, certain notes were raised and lowered by a semitone. So with Leritier's music, especially in Gombert, you have to make creative choices as you perform it. So the whole process is very creative. But with the living composers, it's great because you can just call them and ask and say, hey, this is too fast. And we were very blessed that John Beckwith came to our sessions so he could give us his blessing firsthand.
Fantastic. So let me ask you, you have done all the preparational work, and now finally you get into, let's call it the studio. In your case, I think it was a church. What happens then? What is sort of the recording process, the making of, like?
Well, once you're in, we were recording in Royal St. George's Chapel, and you have to move very quickly because time is money there, and the technicians are expensive, the producers are expensive, the space is expensive. So you're trying to make as few errors as possible, and after doing something maybe 20 times, it has to sound as spontaneous as if it was the first time. That's quite a hard thing to pull off, to keep the inspiration going and to make things sound fresh.
Once in a while a joke.
Yes.
Which I'm sure you're a master of.
No, there's a lot of
some
outtakes.
British humour.
There's a lot of outtakes, there's quite a lot of swearing, but that will be in a hidden track somewhere else.
Fantastic, can't wait for the release.
Yeah, but in Canada we have a couple of things to deal with. Obviously in Toronto we have planes flying over, which is a hurdle. In the summertime you have these cicada beasts that live in the trees and make quite a lot of noise. And so you have to pay someone to go outside and throw stones to get them out of the trees. So it is a challenge, but it's a really rewarding process because in the end you have something that you really you can be really proud of.
On the CD, we get to know you as well as a composer, and remarkably, the repertoire you present on this recording covers 500 years of music history, which is a fairly long stretch, obviously. I wonder sort of what your sources of inspiration are when you write music. Do you compose in your mind? Do you do lots of work sort of on the paper, sketches, and then working it out? How does that work for you? And in particular, actually, I wanted to know, when you write for your own peers in your group, do you have them all specifically in mind? Are you writing your wife a fiendishly difficult solo, maybe, or something actually very elegant and beautiful to make her shine?
Right. Well, there's a lot there. I mean, one of the pieces, the Northwest Passage, was written specifically for Opus 8. This was an auction item that was won by Richard Wernham and Julia West. They wanted an arrangement of this song that they particularly loved, and I was trying to play to Opus 8's strengths. The difficulty is with that piece is that there was no harmony in the original. It's just him singing by himself. So you have to think outside the box a little bit. The great thing about a cappella music is you always have do 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 and la 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 underneath, which is these timeless devices that help you create a bed on which to impose melodies. What did I do with them specifically? I know their ranges very well. I know the kinds of people who are really good at singing super low notes, super high notes. We have a wonderful set of soloists, and I try to make each of them shine in their own particular way. But when it comes to the set of folk songs, which closes the disc, with those ones, I wrote them over 10 years ago, and they were a very specific exercise. So those were composed specifically to be in 4 parts, so soprano, alto, tenor, bass, with no divisions whatsoever. And that was something that my teachers were pressing on me as a student at the time, that being disciplined with voice leading was an important thing. Very much like what Benjamin Britten was doing in his flower songs and Gerald Finzi in his part songs, to write something that was very much considered horizontally, so not just adding parts for no reason. The thing that came to mind with those folk songs is that they had become very sentimental in England, things like Green Sleeves, things like Scarborough Fair.
Not just in England.
Oh yes, they become saccharine, and
Mm.
what I wanted to try to do was to reinvent them in some way, to give them a fresh lick of paint, perhaps to draw attention to some of the texts more. A lot of them about battles, lost love, longing. There's a lot of them are very sad indeed, so they can't just sort of skip along normally. Speed Bonnie Boat is desperately sad. My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean is not very happy. The other thing was that I wanted to break up some of the rhythmic integrity of the folk song. So a lot of the problems I found were about dum ba dum bum dum dum da dum da, and then dum dum da dum, and that kind of thing lends itself to sentimentality and perhaps banality. So what I did quite a lot as they go along is to break up the rhythms so that they are almost fractured and fragmented, and then sort of let them find another way to express themselves while keeping the melody somewhat there. The other thing that was purely personal was that I chose the songs based on the ones that my mother used to sing to me when I was a little boy. And I also only set texts which she could remember. So that's why many verses are missing from the last couple of folk songs, because my mum didn't know the text. So I thought, well, I'll just leave those out. And it just goes round and round as she used to do when I was yay high.
That's quite lovely. So this is a special sort of dedication to your mother.
Yeah,
in a way.
Particularly the last one. Yeah, she used to sing that one to me all the time. Tooraloora, the Irish one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they were close to my heart in that sense. Yeah.
Wonderful. In that regard, I thank you for this conversation, Robert. And
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to your launch on January 25.
That's the one.
And I hope that many people will buy the CD and get to know those firsts,
Yeah.
those gems and jewels of the repertoire.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.